were never actually trapped, and somewhere deep inside you, you already know that. Isn't that strange, to have spent so much time believing you were the one without an exit, when the whole time it was never your room to begin with? You are the one who is free right now, in this exact moment, and they are the ones still standing inside 4 walls they built with their own hands, wondering why the door they thought they controlled no longer opens the way it used to. That is the truth of what happened to you, and I need you to actually feel it instead of just hearing it, because there is a difference. Think about what a room like that really is. Not a room with walls you can touch, not a cage with bars you can photograph, but something quieter than that, something built out of guilt and obligation, and the kind of manipulation that never announces itself as manipulation. It is built by people who needed you small enough to fit inside a story they had already written about who you were supposed to be, and they were patient about it. They did not slam a door in one move. They closed it an inch at a time, so slowly that you started to believe the walls were your own idea, that the shrinking was your choice, that the silence was just who you were. It wasn't. It was never who you were. It was who they needed you to become, so that their version of comfort could survive. You know the room I am talking about, don't you? Maybe it looked like family that only welcomed you when you made yourself smaller. Maybe it looked like a friendship that only functioned as long as you agreed to be the lesser one in it. Maybe it looked like somebody who called it love, while quietly rationing out your worth depending on how convenient your silence was to them. They isolated you a little at a time, so gradually that the air just felt thinner instead of missing entirely. They talked about you in rooms you were never invited into, arranging the narrative so that if you ever tried to defend yourself, you would sound unstable, or dramatic, or ungrateful, when really you were just accurate. That is not an accident. That is a method. People who manipulate covertly do not confess to it. They live in the space between what they say and what they mean, and they count on you doubting things you watched happen with your own eyes. And for a long time it worked. You doubted yourself. You apologized for things you didn't do. You made yourself smaller because smaller felt safer than the alternative. But something in you never fully agreed to stay that way, did it? Something kept quietly refusing, even when you didn't have the words for what you were refusing. You stopped throwing yourself against a door that was never going to open from your side, and in that stillness, in that moment of no longer fighting for their approval, you found the one exit they never planned for, the door out of needing them to see you clearly at all. That is the part they cannot forgive you for. Not that you left loudly, that you left quietly, and you didn't need their permission to do it. Let's talk about what a checkmate actually is, because that word gets thrown around loosely. But the real thing is very specific. A checkmate is not when you destroy your opponent's pieces. It is not loud. It does not require you to raise your voice or prove anything to the room. A checkmate is the quiet moment when the other player realizes, all at once, that every move they have left only makes things worse. There is no escape square. There is no clever save. The game was already over several moves ago, and they simply didn't know it yet because they were too busy admiring their own position. That is exactly what has happened here. While they were congratulating themselves on how well they had you contained, you were already 3 moves ahead, and you didn't even have to try. Here is the room they built, in detail, because I want you to see it clearly instead of feeling it vaguely. It started small, a comment here, a joke there, something said with a smile that left a bruise nobody else could see. They positioned themselves as the reasonable one, the patient one, the one who put up with so much from you, when in reality, they were the architects of the very chaos they claimed to be managing. They needed witnesses to that performance, so they recruited them. A friend who just wanted to understand both sides. A family member who wasn't trying to take sides, while taking one anyway. This is triangulation in its purest form, and it is one of the oldest tools in the covert manipulator's kit, because it does something a direct confrontation never could. It makes you doubt reality itself, because now it isn't just their voice telling you that you're too much, too sensitive, too difficult. It's an entire chorus, carefully assembled, each voice reinforcing the last. And it worked. For a while, you second-guessed yourself in rooms you used to feel steady in. You apologized for reactions that were completely reasonable, because you'd been told so many times that your reactions were the problem instead of what caused them. You started rehearsing conversations in your head before they happened, trying to anticipate which version of you would be acceptable today. That is not weakness. That is what happens to anyone, no matter how strong, when they are slowly convinced that their own perception cannot be trusted. This is spiritual identity theft, plain and simple. Not your money, not your possessions, something more valuable than either. Your certainty about who you actually are. They believed they were winning, and by every visible measure, for a long time they were. You were quieter, you were smaller, you second-guessed yourself in rooms where you used to feel completely at ease. They mistook your silence for surrender, when really, something else was happening underneath it, something they couldn't see because they were too invested in their own version of the story to notice the game had already shifted beneath their feet. Because here is what they missed, the part that changes everything. While they were busy building their case against you, gathering their witnesses, rehearsing their story of the reasonable one dealing with the difficult one, you were quietly doing something they never accounted for. You were not collecting evidence to fight back with. You were not plotting the perfect comeback. You were simply, patiently, becoming someone their story no longer fit. That is the difference between reacting loudly and moving like a chess player instead of a checkers player. Checkers is loud. Checkers is reactive. You see a threat, you jump it, you make noise about it, and everyone at the table knows exactly what you're doing in real time. Chess is quiet. Chess is the long game. A chess player does not announce the plan. A chess player lets the opponent believe they are still in control, right up until the moment the board reveals otherwise. And you, without ever calling it that, without a single dramatic exit or confrontation, were playing chess the entire time they thought you were simply losing. Think about what actually happened while they thought they were winning. Every time they expected an explosion, you gave them silence instead, and that silence unsettled them more than any argument could have, because silence cannot be quoted back to a jury of onlookers as proof of your instability. Every time they expected you to beg for their approval, you simply stopped asking, and each one of those moments, small as they seemed individually, was a move, not a retreat, a move. You were not disappearing from the board, you were repositioning, quietly, patiently, while they mistook your calm for a concession. This is the part that should genuinely unsettle them if they had the self-awareness to notice it. A checkmate does not happen on the final move. It happens several moves before that, in a position the losing player doesn't even recognize as fatal until it's too late to change course. Your checkmate against them happened somewhere in the middle of all that silence, somewhere in the middle of you simply continuing to exist without their permission, and they are only now, in this present moment, starting to feel the walls of a position they can no longer escape. Because make no mistake, they are trapped now. Not by you, not by anything you did to them directly, since you never needed to lift a finger to make this happen. They are trapped by their own record. Every version of the story they told about you to other people is now a version they have to keep maintaining, keep defending, keep propping up even as the cracks show, because the moment they admit the truth, they have to admit what they actually did. That is their room now, built with the same bricks they used to build yours, except this time, there is no one else willing to hand them the key. There is a reason this always plays out this way, and it has nothing to do with luck. Call it karma. Call it the universe balancing its ledger. Call it whatever framework makes it easiest for you to hold, but the mechanism underneath it is consistent. Energy that is built on distortion cannot sustain itself indefinitely. It requires constant maintenance, constant vigilance, constant new lies to prop up the old ones, and the human nervous system, no matter how practiced someone is at covert manipulation, was never built to sustain that kind of chronic internal contradiction forever. Something eventually gives. This is not mysticism. This is what happens when a person spends years performing a version of reality that does not match what they know, somewhere underneath the performance, to be true. Psychologists call part of this predictive processing, the idea that the mind is constantly generating a model of the world and then checking reality against that model, adjusting when things don't match. When someone builds an entire identity around being the reasonable one, the wronged one, the patient one, and the actual evidence keeps failing to confirm that model, something inside them starts to fracture. That fracture doesn't always look dramatic from the outside. Sometimes it looks like sleeplessness. Sometimes it looks like a strange defensiveness that appears out of nowhere when your name comes up. Sometimes it looks like reaching out after months of silence with a message that pretends to be casual but is actually a hand testing whether the door is still unlocked. None of that is coincidence. That is the ledger, quietly balancing itself, whether they asked it to or not. And here is why it happened to you specifically. Because I want you to actually understand this, instead of just accepting it as comfort. It was never because you were weak. It was never because you were an easy target, easy to isolate, easy to manipulate. It was the opposite. You were targeted because something in you was already too clear, too steady, too capable of eventually seeing through the performance, and that made you dangerous to a story that depended on nobody looking too closely. People do not build elaborate rooms around ordinary threats. They build them around the ones who could actually walk out and be believed. Every version of you that survived that room, the quiet one, the doubting one, the one who apologized too much for a while, was not a weaker version of you. It was training. It was the version of you that had to exist so that the version of you standing here right now, clear-eyed and finally out, could exist on the other side of it. Nothing was wasted. Not the silence, not the confusion, not even the doubt. All of it was the forge, and you are the thing that came out of it. Meanwhile, let's talk about where they actually are right now in this present moment, because it is not where they expected to be. They pictured a version of this where you stayed small forever, where the story held, where nobody ever looked closely enough to notice the seams. That is not what is happening. What is happening is quieter and much worse for them. They are lying awake replaying conversations, editing them slightly in their memory, trying to make their own role smaller each time they retell it to themselves. That is not peace. That is a person negotiating with their own conscience and losing. They reach for their phone sometimes, thumb hovering over your name, and they don't know what they would even say if you answered, because there is no version of an apology that doesn't require admitting the whole architecture of what they built. So instead they say nothing, and the silence they once used against you is now something they have to sit inside of themselves. They watch, from a distance, as you continue existing without needing anything from them, and every version of you they encounter, whether directly or through the careful grapevine they still maintain, chips another piece off the story they've been telling. Somewhere underneath the composure they perform for everyone else, there is a low, constant hum of dread, because on some level, they know what they did, and nobody has to remind them, because their own nervous system is doing that work now, every single day without pause. This is not you wishing harm on them. You don't have to. That was never your job, and it was never within your power to begin with. This is simply what happens when someone spends that much energy maintaining a false position. The collapse was never something you needed to cause. It was only ever a matter of time, because a room built on distortion always eventually runs out of structural integrity, and they are the ones still standing inside it, watching the walls they built begin to lean. So say this with me now and mean it. You are not the difficult one. You never were. You are not too much, too sensitive, too dramatic, too anything. You are not the version of you they described in rooms you weren't allowed into. You were never trapped. You were never small. You were never the one who needed to change. You are not who they said you were, and you never had to prove that, because time was always going to prove it for you. You are not waiting for their apology. You are not waiting for their understanding. You are not waiting for anything from them at all, because you already have everything you were looking for, and it was never theirs to give you in the first place. So walk back into that room one final time, not because you need anything from it, but because I want you to see it clearly before we close the door on it for good. Look at the walls they built. Look at how carefully arranged it all was, every witness placed, every narrative rehearsed, every exit sealed except the one they forgot to check. And now, look at who is actually standing inside it. Not you, never you again. You found the door out a long time ago, quietly, without ceremony, and you have been standing in open air ever since, wondering when you would finally believe it. This was never checkers. It was never a loud game, decided in a single dramatic move that everyone could see coming. It was chess, patient and quiet, and the checkmate happened somewhere in the middle of your stillness, somewhere in the middle of you simply refusing to keep playing a version of yourself that was never true. They are still moving pieces on a board that already decided its outcome. You are not at that table anymore. You were never really at that table. You were only ever passing through it, on your way to becoming exactly who you are right now. So let this be the thing you carry out of here. You were never trapped. They were, and the door was never locked. It just took you a while to remember you were always the one holding the key.